Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you for stopping by once again. At the end of the last video, I'd said I was going to talk about financing. I'd received a package of information from one of the major developers in the country that has developments and properties scattered all over the place, and lots of them. And it was quite involved. It had a lot of numbers and so forth, explanations. So I wanted to sit down and go through it and understand it before I said anything about it. And I did, and I didn't like what I read. It left holes, I thought, gaping holes there that needed to be filled in and should have been filled in with information. But I do when I'm not sure exactly of what is being said and not said. There are sometimes words that are used differently here than elsewhere, anything, reason like that. I always have my lawyer sit with me. I brought him in and let him take a look at it to see if he could find something I had not seen or he could see an interpretation that was different than mine. And he didn't. So, in a nutshell, they provide a great deal of information and then leave out critical aspects. Now, if you've got any wits about you and you're not about to sign any financing contract or any other contract without a lawyer having gone over it. So by all rights, you should certainly through the lawyer know of this situation and whatever. It just makes sense. So in other words, all they're doing is putting off the inevitable, and this is what I dislike. I mentioned this some videos ago about a sort of an approach being taken in advertising here that a number of you had seen and wrote me about. Where it's the information they didn't provide that you needed more than the information they did provide. And we had this occasion again. I don't like it because I don't see any reason to keep people in the dark on this stuff. It's very obvious. It should be dealt with. That's all there is to it. It doesn't make, as I say, any sense. So I cannot endorse it. No, not for a minute. I don't even want to talk about it anymore because I'm not going to mention who's done it because they'll find out how I feel about it separately. But it's not. I'm not giving advertising to anybody. Panamanians do not like financing. It's as simple as that. They never have. It's part of the culture, the history of the country, and it's just very strong here. Particularly if they think that they have control of their financial situation, and if they wait a little longer, they'll get somebody who can just come down and buy. There are some reasons to see that as possible already. We have not missed the fact that Americans are selling their homes for much higher amounts than they have. We went through that once before, and that was 15, 16, 17 years ago, when Americans had so much money from the sale of their homes, they could come down and buy outright a house here, and they still have several $100,000 left. If you look in some of the markets in the U.S., that's what's happening, and they could easily you have average. Go to Zillow, take a look around, look at California, but not just there, a number of places. Find areas where the average home is going for $1 million. Well, you can get you an awful lot down here. So, the point being that people are aware of that here, and they wonder, and so we've got a different feelings among the people as to what the future holds, and the possibility of a turnaround in the market here is one of those. So all of this is playing into the game, and it's getting very hard to be convincing to people that what the direction is until we have more people coming in. Now we're getting those. There was, I think, December was 63,000 at the airport, for example, just using those broad statistics. Last month was 158,000. So we're getting more numbers in now. We're getting back closer and closer to normal, running better than 5,000 a day. That's not bad. We need more, and we'll get there. But things are beginning to shift. And this is all impacting people's psychology and what they think about the market. This is the market of sellers, as opposed to you folks who are the market of buyers. In this instance, with expatriate home buying, we're talking about two separate markets that are quite different and can see each other quite differently. So we'll see how this is working out. We're going to be talking a lot more about this in times to come because, as I tell you, if you're coming down here, you're going to have to either buy or rent. So we might as well talk about it, even if it gets a little boring after a while. Enough on that one. Moving along. We've had terrific success in terms of dealing with COVID. We've had 15 consecutive weeks of falling number of outstanding cases, of new cases, and 14 weeks continuous drop in fatalities. We're very, very, very good shape. Exceptionally so. We're getting noticed for this elsewhere. I've been very impressed myself with how methodically everything is working out with the immunizations, the vaccinations, and it's just moving very well. And we're, as I mentioned in the last video, our population over the age of 60 isn't all that large compared to the whole nations most of you come from, which will have 4 times as many. Percentage-wise, because of baby booms and things like that. And much more difficult for you to cover the ones most at risk. And we can do that much more quickly because we have a smaller percentage in that particular age group. And it's moving along very well. And we're pretty much, I think last I saw, we were ranked 3rd in the Americas in terms of people who had been vaccinated. And the 2 in front of us are the United States and Canada. So, or I should say the other way around, Canada and the United States. And then us. Costa Rica is not far away either. It's happening, but it's happening here. And we're very pleased and delighted with it. Now, we have had problems. And so I'm just going to tell you that it's very likely that in the next month or whatever, the pressure is coming from many different angles. We're going to have some sort of certification that you have been vaccinated if you want to take advantage of that when you come in, because we're moving toward a period where vaccination, having full vaccination would be sufficient to get you in. But you're not there yet, for sure, but that's possible. But at the very least have a certification of a test having been taken and so on that can simplify life for everybody. This is the International Air Transport Association, made up of the major airlines. They're really pushing hard for something to get people back on the planes and get them moving. I know it's not politically palatable to some people. We don't care. What we're interested in is getting people here as well as we can. And as the Minister of Health pointed out recently, we so far have 750 people who lied and claimed also things to do with tests and places they had not visited elsewhere in South America and whatever. I don't know what it is with some people. They're not many in comparison to the overall number, but they actually think we're stupid enough that they can say they've never been anywhere else in South America in the last 2 weeks and then have Peru stamped in their passport as having been there last week. Where did these people come from? And other little items presenting test results we get test results from that country regularly, and they don't look anything like that. It was really amateur jobs. It's just amazing. And that's not appreciated, and people like that are fined severely. And they have to go through the test if they want to stay and everything else. And they are found positive. Oh, well, they have to go and quarantine. Forgive us if we're more sensitive to this than you might be. Next door in Costa Rica had a wonderful record from the very beginning of being very controlled with their COVID. And their health system is well known and well appreciated. And they were in great shape, and we were late in getting our Pfizer doses in, even though we'd paid for them before everybody else. They finally got here, so we were slow in that respect, and we had some bad stats in the beginning, no question about that. Not anymore. Now ours are some among the best in the Americas, and in Costa Rica they made a major change some weeks ago. They had required tests and so forth. Instead, they just opened their borders to anybody who came. But they said, if you get COVID-19 when you are in Costa Rica, then you're responsible for all your costs associated with that. So you have to demonstrate evidence that you have insurance that will cover your medical costs, your housing, your food, everything to do associated if you are indeed have to go into hospitalization. And that seems like such a reasonable thing to do, the least they can do, because they need the money and they don't need to spend it on everyone else. But they do need people coming in to help jumpstart their economy. So this seemed like a good idea. I was a little bit more concerned about it, my attitude being, just a minute here, yeah, they come in and they don't have any tests and they don't have vaccination or anything else, and they are infected. Who pays for the people they infect? The Costa Rica, that's who. They pay for it. So it's not just the people coming in that we're concerned with, it's what they bring with them that we're concerned with. And the result of this, very clear, very clear. Costa Rica's had a huge surge. They are setting new records for the number of infections and for fatalities, and the whole situation is out of hand. And the President Alvarado has been on television saying we are at a crisis point, and if we don't get this under control fast, well, May comes and we're going to see our health system collapse. And that's going to be a terrible tragedy. We are the first time anyone's mentioned any of Costa Rica's trials down here in the newspapers to any extent. They've mentioned this because we have a border. And so the Ministry of Health says we're going to have to be more concerned about who's coming across the border. We don't want any of this for them or for us or anybody else, but that's what happens, and I hope they can bring it under control. But I'll tell you something: when you take, when you stop, forcing people to do things, not forcing them, but so much, but you change the rules and you say, okay, everything's relaxed now, move on, just go back to normal, and then it blows up again. Trying to go back to where you were becomes extraordinarily difficult and very, very distressing to people. They get really angry about it. So such is life. That comes in. So I suspect almost certainly we're going to have probably here we're going to require some kind of certification, whether that's of testing or vaccination or whatever, for people coming in. The Minister of Health here has already said this is likely. I'm going to put a link to the International Air Transport Association's section on what they're suggesting to be done, which is a temporary measure. It's meant to only be in existence for a short period of time, a matter until this disease begins to recede and herd immunity or whatever. Now, there are other proposals too. Europe's coming up with one as well. I don't know what that will be. But the key point for you to understand is that we're going to be accepting whatever is accepted globally. I don't see us being kind-hearted and just saying open the gates and say the heck with everybody else, we'll do it our way. No, we're very pleased to have it took a lot to get where we are now, and we want to get the whole distance and get this settled, all right? So forgive us, but that's the way it's going to have to be, and I don't see it stopping, so I just wanted you to know that in advance. That day will come, but what they have to set up something that makes sense to everybody and gets adopted across the board, and that isn't going to happen overnight. Okay. There are several practices here I want to talk about when it comes to purchasing a home. I'm not going to deal with all of them, but they are beginning to come up. One I'm going to mention briefly now. I'll probably do it again in the future, and I sum it up in 4 words. It's advice to you: no title, no sale. And that is, we have what's called rights of possession here. I'm not going to go into all the details, but the person living in the property whose family's been there for years and years and years have the right to possess the land, but they don't own title until the land has been surveyed and they've done the proper paperwork. Well, this was beyond the ability of most Panamanians for decades, and so they lived on the land. They never had a title. They couldn't afford to get a surveyor to come all the way out from Panama City up a dirt road into the mountains to survey their land and everything else. That has changed dramatically, and so the majority of the land, the great majority, especially the good land, so to speak, which is likely to be interesting to people, has been titled, but not all of it. In some of the rural areas and further west, there are areas that have not yet been titled, and that rights of possession are held by people who currently own the land, but they do not own the title. So if you buy the land from them under the current circumstances, it's going to be very cheap, should be, because they don't have title, and you're not getting title. You're just assume that you're going to get the right to possess it. Maybe you are and maybe you aren't, but the point is they've been there for years, so of course they possess it. There's no question. You go to court on this one, the court's going to say, yeah, sure, they have the right to title. no question. The foreigner comes in and buys it, and he wants to claim rights of possession. He wants title. I mean, yeah, just a minute, hold everything here. And you'll find out a lot of other drawbacks to it, the amount of money that's involved with lawyers and the time it takes to deal with it and so forth. And yes, it can be done, people will tell you, and rarely ever is, and it's just not a go-to sort of proposition. So, but it can seem so alluring because it's so cheap. Well, when you ain't got nothing in the way of title to a piece of land, then you're not selling the land. You're selling a piece of paper. Says, well, if they have that, say they possessed it. Enough said. For your sake, I'd say no title, no sale. First question you ask, is there a title? Is this land titled? Okay, that's the first question you ask. If you're obviously a big development, yeah, the land's titled. But if it's an individual place, you ask. Okay. And then do as you see fit. God bless you. But it's my advice, very strong advice on that one. That's what I want to hit today. I am trying to keep this thing, I'm at 16 minutes. I'm trying to keep it shorter, certainly under 20. But I do want to mention one thing, and it has been known in the past. We heard about it 3, 4, 5 years ago. The Canal has already, and the Canal Authority has already said that if the success of the expansion showed enough business, they would consider a fourth set of locks, a new lane, much wider, to be built to increase the large ships, the size of ship that can go through the canal, and to take advantage of the growth in business, but only if it was really successful. It has been very successful, and as you know from prior videos, we did better last year, made more money, brought in more money than in 2019. So even with the pandemic, it's done very well. And we can barely keep up with what we've got. So this will take a while, but it's a very big deal, and it's a plus thing. And as I'd mentioned, I think before, is that when they expanded the last time, they prepared the land where another channel would have to be built if it were ever considered necessary in the future. They had the equipment there. It didn't cost much at all to do the basic preparation of the land. So they just saved themselves a lot of money and a lot of time by having done that, now that they are seriously planning on this next stage. It's not going to happen overnight, guys, but it's coming in this direction, and it's an indication that the country is seeing more interesting times ahead, and there's a lot more than that, and that will come in other reports. Thank you for putting up with all this. I try to keep you informed as best I can, and I really appreciate the messages you send. I hope it's of some use to you. And oh, by the way, I survived. I'm 76 today. I was yesterday, but the day before I was only 75, and I felt so much younger. Didn't do me any good, though. Thanks much for stopping by. See you next time.